All right, everybody, we are back. We are live. This is the inaugural episode of Coach's Corner. It's going to be my weekly live show that we're going to roll. Portpocalypse, that 4-part series that I did, that was a trial run for it. And the support, the downloads, the views, everything made me say we got to go all in on this. So this is what we're here for. We're here we're here to talk about the realities of this industry. We're here to talk about solutions, though. We're not here to dog on old problems. We're here to talk about actual insights into how we can switch this industry around, because there's a lot of talking heads. There's a lot of information that's out there. Some of it's accurate, some of it's not so accurate, some of it's based for clickbait and everything else. And that's not what we're here for. You know, this industry is legitimately built on small business. It's built on that small mom and pop style operations that are out there. And, you know, if we're going to talk about drivers, if we're going to talk about that, we need to talk about the people who are actively involved. Somebody who's, you know, everybody knows who Adam Wingfield is. He's the perfect person to speak to about this, someone who I respect a lot. And he's been behind the wheel. He's built a company up. He is working with that 5-10 truck, small truck operations every single day. He is more well-connected in this than anybody out there. So I thought, who better than to have him on? So Adam, as always, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Chris, and wonderful introduction, and congratulations on what you got going as far as this platform is concerned. I'm just honored to be your inaugural guy.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other person who I'd have on, man. You're one of the OGs at the end of the day, man. So I want, first things first, I'm going to come right at it, man. Driver shortage. Is there a driver shortage? There's so much data that's out there that says one thing or another. I know you have OIDA out there saying, oh, that's not the case. There's nothing. And then you have, the ATA and this TCA are out there saying, there's like 80,000 driver shortage. So like, what's the numbers, man? Like, where are we at?
I mean, what they're saying, okay, yeah. So there's an $80,000 projected shortage of available capacity for somebody to put their butt in the truck and drive it to move the loads. Yeah. I don't believe that there's, and I've been saying this for the longest, and I don't believe there's a shortage of drivers. It's just not appealing. You know what I mean? Truck driving doesn't have the same luster. I was reading an article. It's not sexy. It's not cool anymore. Yeah. It's those things that are. It hasn't changed over time, and when you don't change with the times, that you get stuck in that sea of sameness. And I believe that trucking right now is in a sea of sameness. It's the same lifestyle as it was 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. You drive all day long. You sit up into a truck stop. You eat a hot dog or Chester's fried chicken or whatever they got at McDonald's at the truck stop. It's a different lifestyle. From a typical 9 to 5. And the pay really has not increased with the same type of trajectory as a typical blue collar worker. So yeah. I don't believe it's a shortage of drivers. God didn't wake up today and say, I'm not going to make any more truck drivers. I think that people still are just not interested, just not interested. And I think that the issue is that we're not retaining the good drivers. So we're not doing a good job of retaining drivers. And honestly, man, people are moving onto other things. They're moving away from the truck and taking on other opportunities.
But I mean, the image of a truck driver, like that's one thing, like you're talking about right there. How do we change that perception though? Because like, man, like my whole thing with all my stuff, I want to make the blue collar sexy again. It's completely overlooked, getting your hands dirty. And, I know a lot of I'm from a blue collar family at the end of the day. And, like I wouldn't think twice about not getting behind the wheel and doing something tomorrow. I'll do whatever it takes to support my family. I'm not above any job. But like, how do we change this perception though? Because like, I think we need to do a better job as an industry of marketing to that next generation of driver. I don't know about the whole, is like the amount, the 80,000 driver shortage, 40, whatever number that is. But we do need to do a better job of marketing to it. We do need to do a better job of getting that next generation of people excited about trucking, So like, what are your thoughts on that? How can we do that from a, like a different angle?
So you hit the nail on the head. Number one, we got to market better to the masses. We got to get in high schools. We got to get in colleges. And instead of these organizations constantly posting on social media or constantly putting articles out, get out from behind the desk, get down to the local high schools. Let's talk it up. It's just like, and you look at the military and their recruiting tactics and what they do to recruit and bring on new folks into the armed forces. They get out, right? They roll their sleeves up and they tell you all the things and the benefits there are. of joining the military. But in trucking, there's not. There's just articles on upon articles with just a bunch of BS on the articles. Get in there and let's start from the very bottom up. Let's get down in the schools. Let's market it more. You don't see advertisements on TV about trucking. When I look at the big, large trucking organization, my call to action to them was to put it out in front of the people. Spend your money, put your money where your mouth is, and show them that the benefits is. Show them what you can do as a CDL holder. One thing, Chris, that I look at, and it stands dear to me. Right, I still carry my CDL, right? Been having my CDL for about 22 years. If the shit just falls out at the bottom, I can always go out and I can take care of my own. I can always get behind the wheel of a truck. I can always be a marketable asset in someone's company. We have to start with being able to put it out there. And then you got to look at these shippers. You got to look at these facilities, and they've got to roll their sleeves up as well and make a better environment for truckers. We got to get rid of this ridiculous detention time. Stop delaying our drivers, get them in and out, provide better facilities at truck stops. Truck stops got to get involved. I think realistically, it needs to be a wholehearted, concerted effort between a lot of different major players in the industry to say, you know what, we're going to take this thing head on and we're going to go right after it. There's one thing I do disagree with. I disagree with, hey, you know what? We need to put an 18-year-old behind the wheel of a truck. I do disagree. I don't think that.
Let's start with that. There's a lot to unpack with what you just said, but I want to start with the 18 to, because there is my personal thing opinion on that is, I mean, a lot of the kids that I grew up with, they're driving trucks at 18, like they're behind so what's your big reservation behind that?
Man, my biggest reservations, I go back to our mentality and our maturity level at 18 years old versus your maturity level at 21. At 18, you haven't really had enough experience behind the wheel of a four-wheel car at 3,000 pounds. Nevertheless, to put you behind the wheel of a tractor trailer, have you hold that responsibility on it. A lot of companies saying that, hey, we're going to do that, but this is what we're going to do. We're going to put speed limiters on there. We're going to put all kind of safety limitations on that device. But it's still, if you never drove a truck before, if you never got behind the wheel of a truck before, there's a different level of skill. There's a different level of maturity out there. There's a different reaction that you have to have. You got to have a different, foresight. I just don't see it. Even when I look at myself and my 18-year-old self, man, I wasn't perfect. I look at my 18-year-old self and I just know that even when I started driving a truck at 21 years old, I know what it felt like, and it felt very, very different. And I couldn't imagine that. And I'm not saying that, hey, that, an 18-year-old is not qualified. I just think there's a different level of maturity to put somebody behind the wheel at that early of an age. And that's not going to solve the problem because we're not looking at solving the long-term issue. And then also my last piece on that is that when you think about an 18-year-old, you think about, hey, it's going to be another revolving door. Because at 18 years old, the decisions that you made, you didn't know what you want to do with life.
True.
So, I just think that I don't think that that's going to solve the issue. And I think that's going to create more problems.
I think, I see that, but I'm looking at it, Adam, where it's like, man, my maturity at 21 was probably not much better than where it was when I was 18 years old, but I understand where you're coming from on that. And I always think about it like this, because obviously you can run intrastate at 18, you can get your CDL in most states out there, but it's almost like why, like in other trades, there's an apprenticeship, you come in, you learn the ropes and you learn it from somebody who's got that experience. Now it's like, what's to stop something from an apprenticeship style program being put out there where it's like, hey, you know what? You're going to start off as a yard jockey. You're going to be dropping and hooking trailers in our yard today and everything else. You're going to, it's kind of like an airline pilot. You're a first officer until you hit so many hours, then you can apply to become a captain. I almost think of it the same way in the trucking industry where it's like, there needs to be like a structure because it is. It's like, I think that 18 to 21-year-old demographic, getting them excited in high school about it, but then missing that 3-year window where some of these kids are going to go and do another trade, which again, get into the trade and everything. But I think like there's a path to that we can take advantage of that. There's plenty of people who have the resources to invest in that. And that's what I would like to see. And maybe it's not 18, maybe it's 20. I think just kind of closing that gap. And I mean, you're right. I don't think it's going to solve anything about it, but I also think like that career progression, that's an opportunity that they should be exploring.
No, I love that. The only thing that concerns me with that is consistency around the industry on making sure that those apprenticeships are followed all the way through the right way. Because you look at the majority of the industry is dominated by the smaller carriers. So obviously that would be an apprenticeship that they would have to go through a larger carrier, which would make more sense because obviously those larger carriers can, handle the insurance liability that's associated with that as well. My only concern would be consistency on structure and ensure that the structure was set up the right way. I don't mind an 18-year-old learning how to back a trailer on the yard, for a certain amount of time, and learning how to go through gear patterns and things like that. My concern, and even when you think about, 18-year-olds being able to do interstate, each state is different based on its overall, the topography of the state. So if you put an 18-year-old in the state of Montana or something like that, where it's wide open, versus you put an 18-year-old in the state of Pennsylvania, which is a lot more congested, it's totally different. So a lot of that topography really has to kind of determine whether or not that would be able to work. But I mean, I agree. I think there needs to be some sort of apprenticeship. I think it needs to be some sort of level of guided, step-by-step, methodical approach to bring trucking into the forefront for younger folks. I don't know if 18 years old is just where we should start.
Yeah. I mean, I completely understand. I get it, and, John Redvansky's in the comments there, it's the long-term issues in the industry. And if we keep recruiting into a broken industry, the revolving door does not stop, and it's going to take a multifaceted approach. I mean, it's right. And, so it's like, so we got that portion of it, but like what you were talking about there, what do you hear from the driver? Cause I have family members who are drivers. I speak to drivers, and what I hear about their biggest pain points are and what they would like to see change is vastly different than like what's portrayed out there. So you talk to drivers multiple times a day. You were a former driver. You drove for 20 years yourself, Adam. What is most important, top of the list for drivers that they want to see changed? Like day one.
I know this is such a broad word, but it's so important. It's respect. And respect is really, it encapsulates so many different things, and it's perceived so differently. So when I talk about respect, one of the things is when I go to a shipper, right? And I go to the bathroom, and the bathrooms are just absolutely blown up just to use the bathroom. Even if they allow me to use the bathroom, meanwhile, I'm bringing $200,000 worth of freight into your facility, but I'm not good enough to use your bathroom. Right. I go to a truck stop, and the truck stop's always out of this or out of that, or they treat me differently when I show up. The showers are not ready. Showers are not clean. So when I think about pay from a pay perspective, like I said, the growth of pay in every other industry does not really kind of go along with the growth of pay in trucking. Because you think about this, and everybody says, oh man, you can, go in trucking and make $100,000 a year. True. But you're also going to be out away from your family for 70 hours a week at a time. Right. If I have to be responsible for your piece of steel, I'm working. That's not off time. So if I'm taking my 34-hour break out in the middle of Maine, that's not off time. I'm still responsible for this piece of equipment. Right. I'm not being compensated for that time. Mm-hmm. And the thing about that is that, yeah, I get it. There's give and take with every industry. But the problem so long with this industry is that you think about every other industry, you don't get paid overtime in this industry. Right. So that's another big issue, not being able, when I think about paid fairly. And then you think about like the equipment that's out there. Other equipment is older, under-maintained equipment. You hear that all the time. Drivers are frustrated because these trucks are breaking down. The DPF issues have really caused some really, really good concerns with some of the drivers, where they've got to sit multiple days because they're waiting on the truck getting on the shop. Now the delays in trucks getting in the shop. Now they got port issues with bringing in parts, and things are just getting this time that's being wasted out there. So, a lot of it really kind of revolves around the word RESPECT, and it means something different to every single driver. But the problem is that we've got to do a better job listening to the individual concerns and making sure that we address those concerns accordingly.
No, I agree. And I think that could be kind of used across the industry as a whole, because I'm sure there's plenty of shippers out there who are listening or watching this right now, and they're like, the disrespect we're shown as well. And again, like, and I get that this isn't a finger pointing thing, but it's like, we want to talk about respecting drivers, but I like, and you're like talking about truck stops, for example. None of the executives of a lot of these large major truck stops would shower at those facilities. No. They wouldn't at all.
They wouldn't eat.
Exactly. The rest areas as well. They would, like the people who are supposed to maintain them, so it's like, if you're not going to use it yourself, why would you expect someone to settle for that and be like, and here's, because like, again, it's like drivers, once they're shut down for that, like they can't just like get in their car and drive, so it's like, why would anybody want to do that? Like, why would anybody want to subject themselves to that? And then, the food choices and everything else as well. And I get that, like you're at a fast food style thing. I understand that, but why isn't there an alternative food option for drivers at those facilities? And again, okay, I understand there's Uber Eats, there's stuff out there that it's like that, but Why, like, does that, I don't know for a fact, but do large major truck stops allow food to be delivered into the trucks?
They do, but even that and that's definitely permissible. But the thing about it is to your point, like there are no options. If these are the companies that see the drivers actually resting there every single day, they can make a big impact. Me as a CEO of one of these major truck stops, why can't I get in there as an undercover boss? And how about you sleep in your truck stop? How about you sleep in your truck stop, shower at your truck stop, and eat at your truck stop? Sit at the tables at your truck stop where your waitresses have no clue about customer service, how they treat the drivers out there and those things. What really, really bothers me is we get one time of the year where it's, driver appreciation. Here's a free hot dog and a 90-ounce thing of Coca-Cola. Like, hey, we love our drivers. That's not the case. We got an industry that if we stop, right? If the trucking industry stops, could you imagine like what that would look like? 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. But it's almost like would be almost an apocalyptic type of environment. But to your point, if everybody doesn't hold themselves accountable for these issues, and just like John said, it's much more of a multifaceted approach. Everybody needs to dig in and hold themselves accountable for what they're doing. And that's, I think, was a major issue.
No, I agree. I think accountability, and I think it's hearing, and not just hearing, it's listening to what these drivers are saying, because I think like that's a basic human rights. Like every single one of us wants to use this sanitary bathroom and not being in that scenario where it's like, this is all I have. I mean, it's subhuman. Like it is honestly subhuman. And, I understand the facilities issues at shippers and receivers, and like from an insurance standpoint, hey, whatever, I get it. But provide, like, if you know that this is an issue, provide alternative services, have a port. I don't know. Like I would rather use a porta potty than be told to deal with it and use a bottle in the cab of my truck, right? Or a bucket, heaven forbid, a bucket, like it's just situations like that, man, that it's not taken into consideration. And it's tough because, some people who, they work at a large enterprise shipper or receiver, and they're like, well, we have all this stuff. Why? Like, that's not an issue for us. Like, we're on top of it. Yeah, but you guys are an anomaly almost out there because that's not widespread. It's not an industry standard, that there's cleanly facilities for people to utilize. And then, like the safety of the driver you're a grown man at a truck stop. What do you see out there at night? Like, you're not getting a good night's sleep out there, like why, like if I was in charge of some of these nationwide truck stops, I know some of them might have security or whatever out there, but like, what can we do from that standpoint as well?
I think that, ultimately, even if from a security perspective, and you think about the amount of women that are in the industry as well, the industry itself and these trucks are not designed to help support them either. So when you think about safety and security, you should see how some of these lots are out of lights and you got just suspicious areas in there. You don't have the patrol and security through there. And it's just dangerous all around. I can tell you thousands of stories where me, even as a grown man, you kind of wake up, you're like, man, this is pretty sketchy. I'm going to have to pull out. I can't even get a good night's sleep because you got all kinds of activity that's taking place in those things. I just think that systemically, again, it goes in every single bucket. I think that these CEOs of these truck stops and these suppliers in the industry have got to look in the mirror and say, hey, what am I doing? What am I doing to support the shortage? What am I doing to make sure it's not on my watch? What am I doing to make sure when a driver comes into my truck stop that, he's going to get a great night's sleep. He or she's going to get a great night's sleep. They're going to get a great meal. They're going to get great service, and they're going to feel appreciated. So when they hit the highway, they'll be safe out on the highways and they'll be well rested. And I think that's one of the things that even when I look at it from even back then, it has not changed. And it's just funny that we just, like you said it earlier, we go around, we just talk about these things over and over and over and over again. And it feels like it falls on deaf ears because accountability is lacking.
Yeah. To me, it's like, I understand some shippers, might look at it like, that's not our issue, but it will become your issue because obviously I play on social media a lot. That's where my entire business is built off of. And man, like drivers aren't holding back anymore on what facilities to go into and what not to go into. So if you're having an issue with capacity right now, it's not always about the rate per mile. It's about what is actually happening on site there. And, because again, like I know this isn't for everybody, but like, I know there's a lot of people who are not as aware as they like to think, when it comes to how their operation is or perceived. And it's like, you should go out there, I know, go out there on Facebook a little bit, go into some of these driver groups, and you'll know the truth about your organization and where it stands with a lot of drivers really quick. And again, it's like, that's the only place that they feel like they can be heard because without fear of repercussion, essentially, because it's like, you can't voice this opinion to a lot of people, because if you do, like, you're getting turned off. Like, brokers out there, I know a lot of us like to think that we're not like we are a big part of the issues that are out there. Not everybody, but to me as a broker, you got to vouch for your drivers, and I know that this is a big issue. You brought up detention time. This is something that, I don't even give a shit if I catch a lot of heat for this. If you're a broker and you have detention as a profit center for yourself and you're making money off of that, I'm guilty of that in my career. I've always been very open about my own faults in my career about doing that. But let me ask you this right now. How are you going to handle this situation when that driver calls that shipper that paid you detention? And they're like, why wasn't I paid detention? And that shipper says, I actually did pay detention. And then that shipper calls Chris Jolly and says, hey, Chris, I paid you for this load. Why wasn't the driver compensated? How are you going to handle that call? I've had that call. That's when I changed my ways. That happened probably about 5 years into my career is when that happened. And then it's like, again, how are you going to handle that? Because like, if you turn detention into a profit center, that's an issue. And you can't be doing that, because that needs to go to because like anybody out there, because like, again, this is where that disconnect, Adam, is where it's like shippers are thinking like, hey, we do this, like we provide this. Why is this an issue? Start right there. And then furthermore, dispatch services, and then also dispatchers, they might be getting paid, but they're not paying the driver at the end of the day.
And see, that's why I tell you that one of the things that I feel about that is that there's a trust issue in trucking as well, because it's not full transparency. And, a couple of years ago where, things were really getting out of whack, and drivers was fielding, hey, we want broker transparency. We want 100% transparency. Whether or not that's going to impact your business one way or the other is one thing. But what it will do, it will hold your brokers accountable, because detention is a big issue. Whether or not you think that it is or you don't think it is a huge issue. Because if you're detaining me, number one, I can't move on and I can't make money, because if these wheels are not spinning, my pockets are not earning, right? Yeah. And the longer that you detain me, and especially if I have another load that's booked right after it and it's on a tight window, the longer you detain me, not only are you impacting me on this load, now you're impacting my future earnings, right? And the thing about that detention is, and then we look at detention and layover, the little peanuts that they throw out for that is not worth a hill of beans when I lose $1,000, $1,500, $1,600 in line haul because I had to sit and unload your truck, your trailer that I only made $700 off of.
Yeah. So, when it comes to detention, let's start with this. What do most trucks, I know it varies between companies. What do most trucks, what can they earn in a day? Like, what is a healthy number for them to earn in a day, and what's expected of them?
So a truck can earn anywhere between $66 to $80 an hour, or, depending on the circumstance, you can earn up to $1,000, just a rough $1,000 a day. If the truck's earning $1,000 a day, we just keep it even. That's about a good little safe average. And you think about that, $1,000 a day minus minus obviously all of my expenses and things like that, I'm going to keep about 20-25% on it. So I'm going to earn at the bottom line $200-$250, just give or take. The problem is that, just like you stated, is that, okay, if you're going to pay me $150 for detention, I'm losing out for one day. I'm losing out on that load plus additional $1,000 on my potential earnings on that. That's the problem that I have. And then they don't, and God forbid it be at a grocery warehouse or something like that, and you have to sit multiple days, 3-4 days I've seen, when they're only going to give you like $200 a day, $800 to sit for 4 days. It's ridiculous. There's no way that you can hold my truck hostage and not pay for it. It behooves me that me as a service provider, I'm providing you with service. I'm delivering your products. You have my truck with your product on my truck, and you're going to tell me what you're going to pay me to hold my truck hostage? That shouldn't work that way. That's backwards. That's like me going to Enterprise and say, I'm gonna turn the car in. Yeah, you know what? I was supposed to turn the car in yesterday. Need a couple more days on that. And by the way, I'm not gonna pay the extended fees on that. I know it's late.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's when it comes down to it, layovers, and I know a lot of these things are pre-negotiated out there for layovers and detention. But I think, like, to me, it's like, we know that delays are part of the industry. We know it's a part of it, but it's again, it's that fair compensation thing. Would any one of us sit for 4 days? I mean, you got to think, like, prime example, we've all been on a flight that's been delayed, or, anything like that. The airline compensates you for your time. They compensate you for that delay in most cases. If it's an overnight or whatever that looks like. But again, they're being compensated for it. And I think, like, it's making sure that that person who's sitting there, again, is taken care of, because they're the ones who are sitting in the truck. And then there's a lot of things that, I mean, what are you missing out on there? Like, you're missing out on future loads. You're missing out. And then it's the trickle down effect at that point, Adam, because it's like, you're delayed on this load. Then you got to fall off the load to that broker, be like, hey, I'm delayed on this previous one. Then that broker thinks, like most brokers are, and that's, oh, they're lying to me. They got a better paying load. We're putting you in do not use. We're putting you, we're going to put a freight guard report out there against you, I mean, come on, you guys. If you're putting a freight, like, I've never filed a freight guard report in my 10 years as a broker. Not one time. I've had loads stolen, totaled out, you name it. I've had it happen to me, and I've never felt the need to do that. But with that being said, it's that trickle down effect that kind of comes along with it. And again, I think everybody understands that things happen, but we just want fair compensation is what I'm hearing.
Want fair compensation and understanding that, there's again, the word accountability comes up behind it again, right? We understand there's a cost associated with doing business. As a truck driver on the trucking side, there's a cost associated with doing business. We have to adapt to those costs. We have to adapt, and we have to do the things that are necessary to ensure that we offset those costs with revenue. On the shipper side, you have to understand that there's costs associated with detaining a truck. And when you detain a truck, if you're negotiating detention with that broker, it should be transparency all the way through across the board, which I always tell our clients that when you're going to negotiate rates, make sure you're discussing that detention up front. We need to have that conversation before I even bump the doc to sign this rate confirmation, because I want to make sure that we got equal understanding that if this truck's delayed, this is exactly what we need to get paid for. But I just think that, just from a component standpoint, and just kind of to your point, I just think that long term, I think it has more of a trickle down effect than that first person realizes it, because all it takes is that one freight guard. And if Chris Jolly puts a freight guard on me today, it's not just going to affect me from booking loads with Chris. It's going to affect me booking loads with somebody else. And then I might be in a situation where I might be in the middle of nowhere, and there's only one broker that's moving loads out of that area. And I reach out to that broker to book a load on that area. He's like, oh yeah, no, I can't work, but you got a freight guard on you. Now all of a sudden I got to lose even more money. So there's always a trickle down effect. There's a cause and effect for everything that goes on. I just don't see that. And I hate to say this, man, I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't see emotional intelligence or empathy from all sides and all parties that are responsible, period. There's no empathy. Nobody gives a damn. And I don't think that people even have a care in the world to actually learn and understand the entire ecosystem and the entire process of it, and ensure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. And until that gets fixed, until somebody takes it seriously, until these CEOs roll their sleeves up and figure out exactly what's going on wrong, there's always going to be an issue. There's always going to be a stupid driver shortage. There's always going to be these things that's going to be pain points. But I'm telling you, next year, we're going to need to change that. And it's going to change from just from us having these conversations and people watching this and spreading the word.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. And again, it's like, there's a lot that, I hear a lot of accountability. Like, that's what all parties need to be accountable for themselves, and this, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on as well, Adam, is because, like, you're out there saying, like, hey, drivers need to improve themselves as well. Like, we can't be out there cursing out shippers and receivers and everything else. Like, there has to be better business, like that emotional intelligence that you're talking about right there, because there are shippers, they're going to be short staffed at times. They're going to have things happen. The equipment's going to break down. There's a lot of things that are kind of, the act of God thing that kind of comes into play, where it's like, all right, listen, I understand that, 17 forklifts broke down, which, like, let's be real, that's not going to actually happen. But at the same time, there has to be that emotional intelligence factor of it. Same thing with brokers. If a driver's running late, if a driver had an issue, and, at the end of the day, you're still going to be able to recover the load. Like, why are you doing that to a driver's business? Again, I was a broker for 10 years and I never once filed a freight guard report. And some of the ones out there that, like, rest assured drivers, if you're out there listening to this, I read every single one of those freight guard reports for the most part. If it was double brokering or unpaid and unresolved insurance, that was the only reason I didn't work with you. If it was the, driver accepted load, I didn't call back until 4 or 5 o'clock at night to find out.
Yeah.
no real broker pays attention to that, or driver was late, or no real broker pays attention to that. It's really only the double brokering and unresolved claim issues is what I would really kind of focus in on. But again, this is like the importance, man, of like, once you have that relationship, and this is what I want to bring it back to, man, because it's like, again, it's like that transparency that kind of comes along with it. If I, not always, again, like after I learned my lessons as a broker, having that full transparency with my carrier partners, letting them know what was going on up front prior to accepting, because it's like, I think a big complaint that I see out there in the driver community is these fees that are put in by brokers after the load is accepted and nobody talks about them. Then they wonder why they don't get a signed rate confirmation back or anything along those lines. So like, let's talk about that.
Yeah, so you'll see sometimes where a broker, you'll book a load for $2,000, but the broker's going to say, yeah, you know what, it's going to be $2,000 contingent upon you accepting macro points on your, or whatever type of tracking device that you want to have. So I'm going to send you a rate con for $1,600 until you accept macro points. And when you accept macro points and the whole 9 yards, delivery of loads on time, then I'm going to give you the other $400. A lot of that stuff is almost not discussed in full transparency in the beginning. And that's one of the things that become one of the bigger issues is these additional fees that are associated, but most of it's in tracking. So here's again, to our point, here's a bigger issue. ELDs and APIs can work together and they can talk together, right? Why the hell are we still having to download different applications on a mobile device? So now the driver's got a phone with like 19 different tracker apps in it. That's a bigger issue, right? So there needs to be, again, those brokers should have access to where they can just line into the ELD device and be able to pull that information directly out of the device so that they can keep up with their track and trace. They can keep up with those things. You won't have to there's no need for that stuff because it's the same type of information. I think that we're still in an antiquated state.
Yeah.
From a technology adaptation standpoint, because the technology is there. We're just not adopting the technology. And then to your question, I think there are a little, there's a lot of little, if you want to call it red tape or, fine print that's not being well discussed in there. I do believe that again, we're talking about transparency. I agree that that's an issue as well.
Yeah. And that's one thing that, again, if you're a broker and you're out there sliding those in and not bringing it up prior, like you are the problem. All right. I'll come out and say it. You are the problem, because I've never had a driver turn down tracking when they knew that it was a requirement for the load up front, ever. It's like, they're going to tell you up front, I don't want to be tracked. All right, cool. I can't use you on this load. All right, perfect. It's the driver, and again, like you're talking about with ELDs and the visibility there. Here's my thing. I would love to have ELDs for every, just, hey, let me know where you're at. But here's the thing though, when it comes to, I don't need to talk to the driver 75 times throughout transit. I want to talk like we are right now, Adam, like, hey, you're a real person. All right, perfect. This is the expectations of this shipment. I'd already told him to your dispatcher, but I want to tell him to you too, because you're a part of this equation. I don't want any surprises on your end. There needs to be, like, again, because I think like there is that disconnect of when you tender a load over to a carrier. They don't always tell the driver the full story because that dispatcher's moving 40 trucks in a day or something like that. And details slip between the cracks. But again, as a broker, it's on me. That's my customer's freight. If there are strict requirements for this load, I need to tell them to the driver. But you're going to know about that up front. I'm going to lay it out there for you. Hey, this is when I need to talk to your driver, because again, man, people get sick, things happen. I would like to know about it. But again, it's like, you can't be out here calling a driver 75 times in a day and they're on tracking, they're on time. Come on. Like, I challenge every broker out there to get in the cab of a truck, rush hour traffic in any major city across America right now. And I want to see how you're reacting. I want to see the stop and go, the cars cutting drivers off, everything else, what they're going through. Because yeah, your little tracking device shows that they might be 5 minutes away. And that's very true, but they're getting cut off 75 times. What they're dealing with out there, again, you got to take that into consideration, kind of back to the empathy part of it, understand what a driver can go out and like, I mean, dude, I bet like, and furthermore, if you're broken down too, man, I like being on the side of the road is the worst thing ever in a car. Like you're out there and cars are just whipping by and everything else, man. It's a lot. It's a lot that drivers deal with out there. And it's that emotional intelligence piece of it. But a lot of these situations can be avoided through that one word that likes to be thrown out there a lot. That's communication, but proper communication, not I'm telling you what you need to do.
I agree. And see, I get it. It's 3PL, right? So it's a risk on both sides.
Yeah.
It's not direct. Anytime you don't deal with direct, you're going to deal with risk, and there's risk associated with it. I get it. You want to make sure that, hey, as a carrier, hell yeah, carriers need to have the track and trace. Just because you're not going direct, this is a relationship that you've got to prove. Things have got to happen, right? That's just point blank period. If I go order something from Amazon, I'm going to be able to track my package. If I order something from UPS, I'm going to be able to track my package, because as a provider, whatever is that shipping provider, they're responsible for making sure that they keep up with it. But I just think that ultimately too, man, it's just, I really think that communication, if it was more professional communication, and it goes both ways, right? Because I'm gonna tell you, there's brokers that are out there that suck, and there's drivers that suck too. There's carriers out there that suck just as bad. There's people that are not being honest about their whereabouts, and not being honest about their insurance, but they're not being honest about the things that they do. They're not being honest about their empties. There's a lot of people that are not telling the truth in this industry, and it's hard to filter out through those truths, right? So I think that ultimately, without having that full transparency in the beginning, and I'd rather have a conversation with a broker so we can have that full communication, full understanding. I'd rather have that communication there up front. But again, like I said, it's ultimately, there's a lack of trust in this industry. And you think about it, every other industry. Is there this level of lack of trust? Like, you think about factoring, right? And I'm just going to just throw factoring out there, right? I deliver the product, right? I bump the dock. Your customer is not calling Chris and say, hey, Chris, where's my truckload of potatoes? It's been delivered, right? Yeah. Why is my factoring company say, oh, yeah, we can't pay it because there's a little corner at the bottom of it that's creased out that we can't see all four corners of the bill of lading? Oh, you know what? The paper that they use is too light. We can't see a signature really, really good on that. We won't be able to pay you on this load. And it's a thing that it's just like trust. It's just really it's so outdated, man. It's just broken. I just think that the industry is fragmented, and we just got to continue to do the things that we need to do on our standpoint, or just having discussions and moving the industry forward together.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I'm reading through some of these comments here as well. And I just think that, man, it's just like the reason I'm so passionate about this, and I know you feel the same way, Adam, is it's like, man, I talk to my dad frequently about a lot of this stuff, and we're dealing with the same stuff that he dealt with back in 1976. So I want you guys to put that in. I'm terrible at math, but that's like almost 50 years.
Yep.
Okay. That's almost 50 years and nothing has changed. And why is that? And I get it, because like when you sign up to be a truck driver, it's a rough life. Yeah. You are away from your home a lot. Yes, you are choosing to drive. You are choosing this lifestyle. I understand that. But nobody out there would put up with this. A lot of these talking heads, a lot of these people who are putting this out there wouldn't put up with this type of treatment if they were in that shoe. It's always easier to sit here, like, again, man, I'm going to go home. I'm going to go to my house tonight. I'm going to go to my house tonight. Somebody out there is, due to somebody else's inefficiencies or lack of give a fuck, is going to miss out on a lot of stuff, And again, it's a lifestyle. I understand it's part of the job as a driver. You're going to deal with this stuff, but you need like that respect, that empathy. A lot of that stuff goes a long way. And, I just want to see this change, man. Because again, if we want to fix all of these things that a lot of people love to post about, something has to be done about it. It's that simple. Something has to be done.
No, I agree. And I can remember being a driver, almost missing the birth of my daughter. I can think about all these things that, like you said, man, at the end of the day, after 5 o'clock, you're on your own. It's just one of the most, after 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and you're on that highway, you pretty much know everybody's gone. Everybody's back with their families. Everybody's enjoying the things that they need to enjoy. Meanwhile, when you're out here, and I get it. Yeah, absolutely. I chose that lifestyle. That lifestyle didn't choose me. I knew it was coming with that lifestyle. Yeah. I chose it. However, right, that does not mean that it removes every bit of empathy that needs to be involved in this. It doesn't mean that you don't have to give a damn. The thing about it is that the trucking industry on a large scale, and larger carriers average about 95 to 96% turnover. Smaller carriers about 75%. That means for every driver you hire, you've got to replace it. It has to be important. It has to mean something. But one of the people I challenge these larger corporations. I challenge these truck stops. I challenge these shippers to get in a room and start talking about it and actually listen. Listen to what some of the issues that are really, and actually do something about it. There's two parts to listening. One part is to making sure that the person that's being heard, right? And then the second part of it is actually feeling like, what I said is actually being considered. It's more to it than just hearing me. It's more to it than having a stupid town hall where you get your drivers. Oh, thanks for your feedback. I need to feel like you're actually doing something about it. I want to see some change. I want to see something different about it. I haven't seen anybody kind of set themselves apart. And that's the thing that I think that there's these organizations that are out here, and I'm not going to call them out by name, but we all know them. All they do is write. They do nothing else but write. Get from behind that pen, get out there and start making a difference. Get out there and set up some of these meetings, set up some of these conventions. So we're actually going to get into a room and we're going to discuss this, and we're going to come out with a plan together, and we're going to put a task force in place to improve these conditions. Because if you make an action on something, something's going to happen. But all of this is talk right now. That's all they want to do is talk.
I would love to see, and I know that, you know, a CEO has done this recently, but I would love to see them and some of the executive team ride along, like do a true ride along.
Yep.
I think that would change the perception really quick.
Yep.
I think them seeing the facility and not go, I don't want you to go to your drop yard facility. I want you to go to these truck stops. I want you to go and walk around. Don't market that you're the CEO. Don't even like, I want you to dress as a driver. I want you to be in that. I want you to be in jeans, work clothes. And I want you to see the perception yourself on how that is. When you go into one of your large shippers, that's your customer. I don't want you to announce that you're the CEO or nothing. I want you to go in there and actually feel it and see what they're going through. That's when things will start to change, when they experience it, because it's very difficult, like you're talking about in that town hall, to understand what's going on. And again, you know, nobody's perfect in this. Nobody's to not, like, we're all a contributing factor to this industry. Therefore, we all need to contribute to the solution, because you see a lot of talk that we need to change, but no one's willing to put their hand up and be like, all right, let's look. What can we do? You want to solve, you want to not have empty trucks sitting in your lots, unseated trucks. Be the one who's going to do it. Cause it's not about a couple more pennies a mile. All right. That's not going to 58 cents to 60 cents, you know, up in your pay to 60. That doesn't do shit at the end of the day. When your drivers are out there getting what they're getting, you know? So again, be out there, get involved, you know, like that's the only, like brokers too, hold yourselves accountable. You know, if there's something going on and shit, I know shippers held me accountable, you know. I know that there's a lot of shippers out there who do a lot of great things, and there's a lot of brokers who do great things, a lot of carriers who do great things as well. This isn't a blanket statement, but if we want to see change, we have to all put our best foot forward here. Everybody who's a part of this industry.
And you know, I'm gonna take what you said, and I'm gonna put it on the carrier side too as well, because it's the carriers that ultimately have 100% ownership as well. And the thing is that you got to be more professional, right? You know, the industry itself, it requires professionalism. And you got to understand that the name on the side of the door, that truck represents a lot bigger than you and that conversation that you're having with that person. I saw a post the other day where someone actually posted an email conversation. It was a driver posted an email conversation between them and a broker. So the broker just sent out an email saying, hey, these are the loads that I've got for today. You know, it's the one that they sent out to probably 100,000 carriers. You know, this is what I got for today. You know, just give me a shout back if any of these interested. And then that person was just bragging about their email response, where they just say, shove that rate up your ass. We don't move for cheap freight. Like, stop that. That's stupid. You know, let's cut that out, right? If it doesn't apply to you, then move on to the next. Professionalism is super important. If you're gonna do something, say you're gonna do it. Don't lie about, hey, you know what? I got a truck empty about 5 miles away from the shipper when you're 55 miles down the highway, right? Be who you say who you are. Do what you say you're gonna do. Communicate effectively and be professional, right? Be professional and be prepared. I'm tired of drivers demanding this and this and this and this, but they're not giving their best foot forward as well. You got drivers that want $2,500 a week, but I want to be home every weekend. I want to be home every night, and I can't drive manual trucks. All right, you know what? Well, you don't have that skill that's necessary that when you do that, then the pay need to be commensurate upon the skill and your requirements. It has to be a give and take there. It's not, and I hate when we have, okay, it's broker season, it's carrier season. I hate that. It's one season, right? It should be one season. Trucking is one season. And until we understand that and we stop playing and going back and forth with this seesaw and this pendulum and things like that, where we're pointing fingers at the brokers and the brokers are pointing fingers at the carriers, when we turn it around and say, okay, you know what, as a carrier, I can do something differently. Let me give you 3 things I can do differently, and I'm going to do them differently. And you got 3 things as a broker that you're going to do differently. Now we can work together. Now we can make change. But change has to start with accountability. Change can't start with somebody else. You got to be able to start with yourself, and you got to do a better job yourself. Be the best version of you.
I can't top that. that right there. That's a perfect spot to kind of wrap all this up, Adam. It's well said, man. That's phenomenal. I know we're right up on time anyways. Dude, it's always great to hear your perspective on this. And, this is where the change happens, is it's when, dude, I'm a broker at heart. You're a carrier at heart, but we got to sit down and have this style of conversation and understand, like, hey, you know what? If we want better, we got to do better. We got to hold ourselves accountable first. If you're a broker out there and you're struggling with carriers right now, maybe you should assess how you're treating drivers, because I understand it's not going to be 100% perfect all the time. That's not going to be the case at all. But the overwhelming majority of the time, it is not as hard as we like to try and make it on ourselves with that. So, Adam, with that being said, thank you so much for joining me. The replay on this will be out in the podcast, on the Coffee with the Freight Coach podcast later on today, the audio only version of it. I appreciate you guys so much for all your support and everything else. Again, this is Coach's Corner. It's going to be a weekly live thing. We're going to kick this back up again next Thursday, the 8th, because, with the way that the month ends here and everything. So we're going to go. If you have any suggestions on topics or anything else, email me direct, chris@thefreightcoach.com, or DM me on LinkedIn or anything like that. And we'll go from there. Adam, as always, I appreciate you, and we'll be talking to you guys soon.
Thank you, my brother.